everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Reality Engaged. And today we have a very special show for this Mother's Day. Yes, it's Mother's Day. I went to Costco the other day on Saturday. It was packed. I forgot that it was going to be Mother's Day today, and it was a disaster. But anyway, I made it out alive. But today I have two special guests. This is the first time I'm doing a two guest show. So I got to do a different format. And my guests are one of them's coming live from Israel, the other one's in the state of New Jersey, which I live, and we're going to be discussing many things, specifically asking the question, "What is a Jew?" And this is kind of funny because me and Leo spoke about doing a show later in the future. Because what is a woman? I was speaking to Leo about, on his podcast after the work I did 4 months ago. I was on his podcast. Like, what if we did a show? What is a Jew? And it was kind of funny. So here we are today, 4 months later. This is the last time I spoke to them. So we're going to talk about what is a Jew, Jewishness, Judaism, Kabbalah, even get into the Jewish question. Just a free-flowing discussion from their perspective to see if we can solve this problem that we call anti-Semitism from both sides of the aisle, not just one blaming one group and the other, but literally having a conversation about it, because that's what we want to do. We want to spare innocent people from getting in trouble and getting hurt and all the other stuff. So without further ado, I'm going to invite my guests on, introduce them to you all. Guys, how are you doing? Leo and Seth, thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, Lucas.
Thanks for having us.
See you guys.
Yeah, we had interesting comments. I was sharing the show. Oh, the Jew, 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 Jew. I'm like, come on, people. Let's relax for a minute, okay? They're not all the same. They're not a monolith, which is, I think, one of the most important things that I learned from you guys when I spoke to you on the podcast. That Jews are not a monolith. In fact, when I studied before I came on your show, I listened to like 90% of your podcasts, and I was shocked.
You did, I gotta say.
Yeah, I was shocked how much infighting, how much destruction Jews do to themselves. And then you guys went back into the Roman history. What was it? Tiberius came to conquer Jerusalem, and half of the Jews, Titus, yeah. And most of them were already dead, killing themselves. And he's like, what am I supposed to do here? So it's an interesting history of people. Of course, your Jew function, from what I understand, is this organization whereby you try to figure out what is this from a scientific perspective, right?
Well, not just if I may just add,
sure.
We actually stand on three legs, if you will. We
Sure,
have a huge library of Jewish text, right? It's like one of the probably biggest library of text stretching back thousands of years. So Jewish text by Jewish sages, recognized sages. I'm not talking about some esoteric, right? Like really mainstream text. We have historic patterns, which is it's a huge social experiment that's been going on for thousands of years, if you will, and you can start to add up all the facts, all the results, and you can get a pretty clear picture. And then on top of that, there's network science, which is a newcomer onto the scene. Just the last couple of decades, big data and network science have allowed us to look at huge groups of people and their interaction between them, and also just the human network as a whole, and understand how networks work and sort of different roles, different parts of the network have, like the human body, the electric grid, airports, you name it, right? The internet. So when you add those three things together, you get a pretty compelling picture of, what is this phenomenon called the Jew.
The Jew, right? And in your worldview, it's that. Well, you come from a Kabbalah. First, I want everyone to understand. Both of you, you're not religious per se. You are Kabbalists, and Kabbalists. Actually, I watched a 6-hour documentary by Tony. What's the guy in your team? Tony
Kosenek?
Yes, Kosenek. 6 hours. I watched it, and it was just
Perception of
explaining.
reality. Yeah.
Yes, just explaining how there's this will to bestow, created this entity, and it wants to give, but the entity has to want to give back out of its own pleasure. It's this whole process, and it comes from layers of selfishness and ego, and then at some point you realize all the money and power and women in the world that will not make you happy, right? And then you want to give back just to love, and that's what the Creator wants you to do, but He wants you to do it by your own choice. He doesn't want to force you to do it, and that's a whole other thing. So I found that interesting.
How many years would it take in order to take nothing and turn it into mud and then grow that mud to actually achieve that goal? And what
Yeah,
would that
we're talking
long
about a long time, right? We're talking.
process look like? Yeah, so
Well,
it's
Seth, I
probably
mean,
going to be yeah.
from your point of view, you're as not being like you don't believe it was 6 days and Hashem made the water first instead of the sun, and the in your view, you don't disagree with biology and evolution. You think these texts are people trying to explain something that didn't understand at the time, or how do you look at Judaism as a religion? Because I know there are some Jews who think 6 days literally,
Hmm.
things of that nature, and it just doesn't add up with science. What's your view as a Kabbalist? Do these
Okay,
things?
so I think actually I cringe a little bit even when you say Kabbalist because there's like Kabbalah with the Q, there's Kabbalah with the C, there's
Uh-huh.
also within Kabbalah there's I don't know, you could say that you like football, but if you like the Giants or if you like I don't know who the Giants rival is, you might want to kill each other even though you're both football fans,
Hmm.
so it's a totally or one team likes to pass and one team likes to run, but they're both football players. Or one guy's a defensive lineman and the other one is a running back, but they're both football players. They both train differently. They both think differently. So, also want to just qualify, not just have one umbrella of what is Kabbalah. We're specifically we've been studying a certain method which is very, very practical, very methodical. It looks at everything. It doesn't require anyone to believe anything, like Leo was saying, network science and historical patterns in these texts. And when we look at, um, okay, so also what I said earlier, if you were to take mud or just take nature and develop it, it takes a very long time. Yeah, Leo, you want to say something
No,
about
it's
that?
you don't have to go so far as mud. It just to take like a
It's
really
like,
primitive person. Just take a caveman. It's
yeah.
it's it's already hard enough to imagine what the distance. Go on.
Um, so let's leave religions on the side because I mean, look at our world today. Look at the unbelievable amount of confusion in the schools around sexuality, around everything. There's just medicine, uh, just everything. Everything is so confused. You walk into Costco, probably 40% of the people are obese, right? And then now they're being prescribed a pill to make them not obese instead of understanding why do we become like this. So everything is a mess. Also, religions are a total mess. When we say the question you asked is what is it, a Jew or what is a Kabbalist
A
or what is it?
Kabbalist.
Well,
What is a Kabbalist?
the whole thing is what is it? We'll get into who actually are
Okay, so what,
Jews,
what is a
but
Kabbalist? So what? Who are Leo and I? Who are the
yeah,
people
what
that
kind of
who
Kabbalists are
who
you?
are
Yeah.
our friends? Who are the people that we are with and studying alongside every day and doing this work with every day? We are people who hit rock bottom in our hearts. Some people are successful business people. Other people may be, a janitor somewhere. It doesn't. That's not the point. But regardless of where we are in the world, we all kind of hit some point in our life where we needed. We were not satisfied with bullshit stories, with nursery rhyme stories, with hocus pocus stories. We all, Leo and I, both tried psychedelics and both traveled around the world and both tried everything. Leo was in the army, I wasn't in the army, but we tried a lot of things. The military, we both tried a lot of things, and I think that people who are we? We are the people who reach a dead end and say there has to be some meaning, there has to be some purpose, there has to be something behind all this, and we have an expression that when the teacher appears when the student is ready, and I'm sure it's not only our expression, but that when a person really reaches that point inside where he doesn't feel that there is anything else that he can feel himself. And listen, we all like sex, we all like food, we all like vacations, all those things. Not saying that we're living on a mountaintop, but in addition to all of those normal animalistic things, if there's some other place inside of us that awakens that we can't fulfill, and it's dying, literally dying to be filled, to know what am I living for, what is all this, those are the people that that end up coming together and then actually finding this, what we're studying, the book of Zohar, and the texts that we're studying. And we found a teacher who also, our teacher is our lineage is a teacher who had a teacher who had a teacher who had a teacher who attained this integral reality, who revealed this. It's called the third line. Like we in our reality, we all are familiar with right, left, up, down, in, out, black, white. So there's something called the middle, which is this third force, which is it's not supernatural. It's a natural force, but it requires us to discover it, and it's above the two opposites. And that's who we are. I think that's in a nutshell.
Let,
You
let me,
probably do
can I,
better.
Well, let me try to. So in other words, it's almost like Taoism. You got the dark side and the light side, and then there's that middle ground where it's like Zen. It's like this. Because look, as you said, physical pleasure, sex, food, whatever, insatiability. I mean, you get to a point where all these people who have all this women, power, money, they're like, I want more, and they start getting degenerate. Like, and then eventually they cannot fill it. And you're saying, okay, I'm at that point. I'd have to go through all. I'm not a multimillionaire like Andrew Tate or something doing degeneracy, but I'm not happy with X, Y, Z, and there's more to it. And this is like a instinctual thing, without religion, without all this, to just find that peace. And just to clarify, because you mentioned there's different other forms of Kabbalah, right? Like you got like Madonna with the bracelet and
Yeah, we're
magic
not an
and
expert on any of those things.
yeah,
I
yeah.
know.
So like there's that Jewish mystics. People think it's like this magic, cast a spell and then
So
suddenly,
after the
right?
so Lucas, after the destruction of the Second Temple,
Hmm.
so before that there wasn't a religion, so to speak. They lived a certain way. It was a lifestyle. And after that, when the people went into exile there, the sages prescribed for the nation. They already wrote about it. You'll be in exile for 2,000 years. This is what Leo's saying. We have books and we have time to understand what's going on now and to reflect on it. So you'll be in exile for a period of 2,000 years, and that's what happened. And during that time, in order to hold the group, they took their inner work, that we call it spiritual work, and they corporealized it, they materialized it. So instead of um, doing some inner process, you put on a garment with a certain number of knots on it and strings, which represents some inner process. When you eat, you take the red and the white, which would short circuit together, and you separate them. You don't eat the meat and the milk, for
These are the
example. So all of
mitzvahs,
these
right?
inner,
These are the
right, so all of these
mitzvahs. Okay.
inner spiritual processes became materialized in order to take a people and send them out, who would be dispersed among all the nations for several thousands of years, and to some extent hold it.
I, I just wanna add one,
Go ahead.
I think an important detail, because you asked what is a Kabbalist. So just for those who don't speak the language, right? So Kabbalah means to receive. Okay, so it's the wisdom of how to receive. What do you want to receive? You want to receive pleasure, and that's where we are. Here, we're creatures designed to receive pleasure, in very specific, very precise ways. Like each person knows exactly what makes them happy and satisfied, right? And what's pleasurable. This I like this, but not that, and a little, hot or cold or hard or soft, whatever it is. And all of nature is actually motivated by the same desire to receive pleasure. And Kabbalah explains, it teaches really, it's the wisdom of how to receive that pleasure. Because if we were animals, we wouldn't need that wisdom. Animals operate instinctively within the system of nature. They know what gives them pleasure, what doesn't give them pleasure. They stay away from the source of pain. They go towards the source of pleasure, and it's all very simple, and it's all part of that system. It's almost like working on autopilot. A cow doesn't have to think in the morning, oh, should I eat this kind of hay or this kind of hay? There's no question, right? It's very clear. Animals don't make mistakes, as the saying goes. And all those videos that you see on YouTube of animals making mistakes is really just kind of this proximity to humans. But in nature, if you go out in nature, there's no mistakes. There's no like, oh, I meant to do this and I did that. None of those things. But for humans, we do have a little bit of free choice, and therein lies our, sort of our way up or out, if you will. But also our downfall is in that little extra bit of choice, because that's where the confusion begins. I will choose this. I will choose that. I will try this, try that. I'm disconnected from the real source of pleasure and from the and what it will actually give me pleasure, right? So that confusion is surrounding all of us. And if in earlier days it was pretty clear what would give me pleasure, right? I'll have this much food and sex and family and money and honor and power and knowledge. All those things were pretty clear, and you know that if you had more of something, it would equal more pleasure. Now we're living in a world where
Degree of, like we say, creator, or
well,
reach
yeah,
that
of course,
bestowing force,
yeah,
that
get in touch with the
that force
source
of
of
life.
pleasure. Yeah, get in touch with the source of pleasure, not just with the pleasure itself, right? Everybody's chasing the bone on a string. We want to meet the hand that pulls that string.
Right.
And
Literally.
so that would be the ultimate pleasure, if you will. So it's the science of how to receive that ultimate pleasure. And it's not just receive, it's receive, perceive the full picture of nature, all the laws governing nature, all of that. So that's what Kabbalah teaches. Anything else is not Kabbalah. It is, as Seth said, it's a sort of a, how can we use that to also derive some egoistic pleasure? Oh, great, we'll sell you some, do this and get some money or whatever. These are
Right.
all
There's
falling back.
corruption in every
Yeah,
religion. There's going to be
in
corruption.
everything, in
I mean,
everything.
Christianity has multiple sects. They're all fighting each other, all saying they're fake. Islam has literal wars against each other for millennia. They're all
Yep,
fake. Judaism
everybody.
has multiple sects. Even the Orthodox have like 200 of them.
Oh yeah,
You're,
yeah,
you're
yeah.
not
Oh,
wearing enough wigs. You need longer wigs. This one needs to be like all these crazy things made by human beings to derive that cult like following, to get the money, to support the synagogue or support the
look,
church or support the.
everybody's trying the best they know.
Yeah,
They just don't
yeah.
know. They just don't know better. If you're not in attainment, if you don't see that those forces at work, what do you have left? You have what
Right.
you know. Oh, well, what you see with your eyes, you lack that sense. You don't see it, right? It's like a blind person, a blind leading the blind. I
Yeah.
don't see where this is blue light, red light. I don't see. So I'll just tell you, I feel that this side here is where the red light is, and this is where the blue light is, and this is where the yellow light. You can't see, you're blind, man.
So
So
this is not a supernatural thing. So the creator is natural. It's all one plane, right? It's all
it's
one
all
existence.
natural.
Yeah,
It's
it's
all
all
one
natural.
system.
All right. All right. One system. So
However, it is something absolutely phenomenal and wondrous to discover it, because you begin to it's like Lucas, for example. Imagine the pleasure you feel. This is a very, very small example, but just to give you an idea, imagine the pleasure you would get eating an ice cream, or imagine the pleasure you get when you see your kids sitting there eating it. It's a totally different kind of, you're proud dad, you did something for them, after the law, whatever. It's a different quality of a pleasure. So we're talking about something that's totally qualitatively different. You'd still call it natural, but it's something um, beyond our. We would categorize all the pleasures that we have in our life as animalistic pleasures. So
right.
it's something qualitatively beyond that. So in
Because
that sense,
Well,
because
it is.
it's not on the same spectrum. It's like you
yeah.
have
No,
like,
it's a more ecstasy versus a little
well,
bit of
it's like a different spectrum. You know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah,
It's not like you have like all the colors and then the sounds and then the
yeah,
smaller
yeah.
waves and then finer waves. Those are all still the same waves. You can develop instruments to perceive
I
these
look at it like
waves.
this, guys. I look
It's
at it, everything is one energy, right? And then you could say it's spiritual, mental, physical. To me, it's all representing, it's all the same thing being in different forms. So I understand where you're coming from. When you say
but
natural, people think, oh, that's matter, and therefore there's an extra level where it's supernatural. Well, it's all one connected system. So
true.
whatever you
Right.
call it, it's one
That's what
system,
we're
whether
saying
it's
also.
material,
Yeah.
whether this is made of a plutonic form or it's not, it's a rock. It's all energy in different levels of formation. So to me, it's irrelevant what we call it.
Right.
But
Except
it's one system, though, is what you're saying.
except just like probably everybody familiar with this picture of the sort of the classic picture of the atom, right, with like a nucleus in the middle and then these layers of electrons, right? And you know that an electron cannot jump from one layer to another unless there's like it gets enough energy, right? You familiar with this kind of like basic?
Yes, yes, yeah.
So there is this barrier, meaning there has to be a set a qualitative change for you to begin perceiving these higher layers. It's not
Yeah.
about more energy. It's not like I'll increase the energy and I'll get to
Well, you're right.
I'll
It's
get
like you
to
increase more money, you increase more women, you increase more drugs. It doesn't
it's
change the
exactly it's not
perspective.
it's a qualitative change. It's
Yes.
a change in
Got to
Kabbalah.
open
We
the
call it
gate.
a change in intention
Got to
in
open the gate.
Kabbalah,
Yeah.
but it's really like a different direction of the energy. So they don't. It's all around you already. You don't have to go anywhere. It's not at the end of some rainbow. It's right here. You're totally oblivious to it.
Yeah.
It's that's kind of a good description.
Okay, so let's get into the question. What is a Jew? Now, I've looked at your network theory videos. So essentially, from what I understand, is that the Jews, whoever they are they're always going to be smaller in number, and they're hubs. In other words, they connect everyone else. That's their chosenness, their job, according to what you're saying, is that they're this like hub, and then everyone connects to them, and that's why there's not a trillion of them. There's only
Right.
I think there's only 20 million of you on the planet, and you've always been a minority everywhere you go, among every people, and for some reason you're always on the top wherever you are. It's media, this, that, bank, and you're everywhere. And some people are like that for some reasons, and we'll get into that later in the Jewish question. But so, how did these people? Okay, first of all, who is a Jew? What is a Jew? Is that because even this is an argument? I've seen rabbis say you're only a Jew if your mother's a Jew. Then I see others who connect a more genetic level, like Zionism, for after the Holocaust. They say, well, look, we got to incorporate if your
We
father's a
can't
Jew.
we can't stand behind what anybody else says, and
Right.
that's I
So,
think
what is
when
your
I see all the
definition of a
I know
Jew?
when I see all the
Yeah.
comments and stuff in Twitter, it's like
Yeah, I know.
my head starts to hurt because like guys, we're not here to speak for every single confused person or idiot who has an opinion out there and try and defend it here. We feel what we feel. We understand what we understand. That's what we're experts in. That's what we can speak about. We can't come and tell you, well, on page, 58b of this tractate of the Talmud, it says that, and there, and we're going to spend 30 minutes trying to debate it. It's ridiculous. So I just want to say that at first. We're not here to talk about anyone else's definitions. We understand it the way we learn it, what after all of our discovery, what makes sense to us. That's what we can discuss. We
Right.
can't. Yeah.
But
Okay. Just
what
wanted
is
to
it
be
for
clear.
you? What is a Jew according to your worldview? Is it genetic? Is it mother? What is it to you?
Okay. So we live in this world like other people. Okay. So, and I want to, for the sake of our conversation, I want to get away from that. So the reason is because in this world, for example, someone goes to synagogue on Yom Kippur, and someone else goes to church on Christmas or Easter. Okay,
Good
but
Friday.
Good Friday. But when we're talking spiritually, both of those people can contain inside of them what we're talking about as Jew. So what you do, where you go on Friday or Saturday with, to do something in this world, that's not what we're talking about. Specifically, what we're talking about is a person who inside of them, a point has awakened inside. A point called straight to El, Yashar El, which is Yisrael. A point, a desire inside of them has awakened that needs that answer that we discussed earlier. That we call that the point in the heart awakening. We call Israel, Jew, a desire, a certain desire inside.
Maybe
I,
just a good recap. We talked about it when you were on our show,
Yeah.
and we do cover it in a lot of the episodes. But maybe a quick recap of kind of where this term comes from and where this group comes from. If you go back to Mesopotamia, right, the ancient civilization that lived there, that existed of many different clans and tribes living together, a few million people in the area of the Fertile Crescent, living a pretty good life.
In Nimrod's Babylon.
Yeah, that's that story. Even though, again, I don't want to get into names too much because some of those names again represent spiritual qualities. You won't find evidence, physical evidence for them. So that's why history and internality get confused sometimes. So I want to leave it aside. But roughly speaking, historically, right, on the level of this world, a few thousand years ago, 3,500 years ago, you have these people living there, almost in fairly harmonious life, right? And then the human desire, as it does its thing, it develops, it evolves, and every time, every few 100 years, every few generations, it makes a qualitative leap, right? Which changes the relationship between people. And one of those leaps happened then. And suddenly people, almost overnight, they wake up and they start to relate to each other differently. Suddenly, I don't trust you. I don't care that you're like my second cousin or whatever, or that I know you're from this clan or that clan. We kind of lost that initial trust, right? Where there was trust, there's now suspicion. There's now, we know this is mine, this is yours, and I don't think that we can get along, and even the trade is not really working well. There's
We
this.
went from living way more instinctually, having instinctual natural roles of where we traveled to eat, we followed the berries, we followed the animals, we followed the water. And now that we were settled and civilization was developing and each one's individuality is developing, we became more and more individual.
And at some point we kind of like we weren't able to get along, and the natural reaction of people, just like in a marriage, right, is just let's just part ways, right? I'll go here, you'll go there, and that'll be fine. And there was plenty of room to go, by the way. So
Right.
that was, right. The world was not settled, so you could go anywhere. But one local priest, his name was Abraham, he observed nature, and he saw something else at work here, a different process at play here, which is unlike animals where we're not getting along. We'll go here, you'll go there. He saw an opportunity to actually reveal a call it a deeper layer of nature, right? A more a new form of connection he saw, and the way to do it was to keep our separate opinions and a separate sort of just keep this friction that was going on, and above it connect, right? Care for the other above the differences. Sounds simple in theory, but at the time it was kind of like weird. Like I don't like you, you don't like me. We just go our different ways. And everyone's like, no, no, no. We have to learn how to rise above that. Keep those differences in qualities, in opinions, in taste, in everything, and connect above that. Find a way to love the other in spite of the differences. And most people thought it was a crazy idea, and they didn't want to hear any of it. But a few thousand people gathered around Abraham and said, "We want to hear." So there were like people from every clan, from every tribe, if you can imagine. There were always a few outsiders, right? Those
Hmm.
seekers that we talked about earlier. Those who like, there's got to be something beyond. There's got to be. I can't explain it, but I feel it, right? That's kind of what characterizes a seeker. They don't have the truth is out there, right? All those people, conspiracy theorists, people who are looking for things, looking for answers in non-conventional ways. We all share the same kind of feeling that there's something beyond.
Right.
And Abraham said, "Yeah, that feeling. Come to me. I'll teach you." And those people gathered around Abraham. They were called Hebrews initially, from the word ever, to cross over. Right. That was the first sort of indication of what was going on. We want to cross to a different quality, a different form of existence, not the egoistic one just to receive in order to receive, but suddenly a different form of life, a new intention. Receive in order to be able to give to the others everything they need. It's a different mindset. It's not just a transactional thing. It's a whole change of intention and attitude. Those are the original Hebrews gathering around Abraham, and Abraham taught them. And from that moment on, there begins a process of development. So as the rest of the world develops and the ego grows slower, but grows nevertheless, with this group, it grows faster because they're working on that connection. As soon as you start to work on that connection, that ego grows even faster, and they come to reach the land of Israel, as Seth mentioned. This is again yashar el, straight to the Creator. We don't want to just simply connect. We want to connect in order to come into contact with this upper force, this el, right? In Hebrew, that word el for God. It's like it's something, some quality. We want to reach that. So they come to that, and later on they also start to refer to them as Jews from the word Yehudi or Yichud, right? So again, there are other meanings to the word, other roots behind it, but that is the sort of the inner meaning that we sort of work with, right? That's what Kabbalists describe in all their writings, like Yehudi from that root of Yichud, unification. And ever since that time, the whole biblical story is really a story of the Old Testament, I should say. It's a story of the development of that group of people, of that methodology, of that particular desire. Everything is about that development. It's not a historic, not a geographic account. It's a development of the desire and the correction of that desire.
And and also I want to say, when I watched Tony, what's his last name again?
Kosinek's
6-hour documentary in the Kabbalah, he says something called the language of branches.
Right.
And this is why I think a lot of people, they'll look something in the Bible and say, oh, they murdered these people, Amalek, this, that. Because I've heard Amalek is a tribe that attacked the Jews, but I've also heard Amalek is doubt. So it seems to me
Amalek is an acronym. Al menat lekabel. It's an acronym for in order to receive. It's that intention.
That's what I'm saying. So that's the thing with religion. There's so many ways to interpret. Like, did Jonah really get swallowed by a whale? Is it a fake story? Did Adam actually speak to a snake? And this is why religion is problematic. It doesn't say, look, this is an allegory to mean this is what happened in the garden, and there was no actual garden. There wasn't just two people. Whatever. Like, that's the thing with religion. So when I heard about the language of branches, Tony Kosanek is explaining these are written in a way to describe something deeper in a scenario where you would have to really understand what they're saying in order to, it's not literally slaughtered this person. It's like
and
something
it seems
else.
like there should be a better language to do it in. And why would you write something in such a confusing way? And that's a super legitimate question that we all ask. Like, why don't just say, do this, do this? But somehow the way that we're constructed, this story develops, this story somehow speaks to the process that we need to, the process of development. It's the correct recipe, even though it doesn't seem right. Like when you try and teach a kid an instrument or something, and it's like it hurts and he doesn't know what he's, how and why. But this is the process, and someday you'll be able to do everything.
Well, you're teaching people who are nomadic. They don't understand science. They don't, like if you have this wisdom, you can't just be like, here's a black belt for you, day one at the dojo, right? You got to start white belt, gray belt, or whatever the levels are.
That's you're touching on a slightly different aspect, which is just the language itself. Forget the language of branches, right? Root and branch. That's an internal layer that's common to all the different ways by which we describe these processes. But just outwardly, there are 4 languages that discuss these things, right? You have the language of the Bible, right? That's one kind of language. You have a language of allegory or Agadah in Hebrew, kind of like the equivalent of like a fairy tale, if you will. That's another language of some myths and fairy tales, right? That's another language. Then you have also the language of the Talmud, right? You have that, which sounds like more like law, right? So you have these, and then you have Kabbalah. So you have 4 languages that describe the same thing, but in different ways. They kind of correspond to the 4 layers in reality, and so that adds another layer of confusion, because you think, oh, the Bible is some children's fairy tale. No, I'm going to focus on the Talmud. And then someone says, no, the Talmud is some it's antiquated. We'll focus on Kabbalah. No, they're all the same thing, just different language to describe the same thing.
Right.
Okay, so that's in addition to being written in the language of root and branch, where the
can we talk about why Jews run Hollywood for a second?
Well, we'll get into all that. Trust me, we'll get into the Jewish question because it's important. But I want to talk about again, what is a Jew? So just to take what you two guys took, there was a group of people from every nation. So this is not a racial issue. This isn't an ethnic issue. Maybe Abraham was the first Semitic person. I don't know what his origin was, but he's like, hey, I got this method. Everyone's like, let me try it. And only a few people, this is where the numbers are small, left the nations. The other
Right.
nations
I
went
think
on being
Josephus said like a few tens of thousands, and then
right.
maybe there was
So
millions
a
there.
small amount of people said, "Let me go check this out." The
Correct.
nations
Continue
actually
to evolve.
increased their egos. So this is where they're getting like the Roman.
Increase quantitatively. They kept growing
Right, right.
on, you know.
But I'm saying from my spiritual work, the ego of selfishness, nationalism.
Yeah,
So this
yeah,
is
yeah.
why this is probably where the anti-Semitism start. I'm trying to look at the root because look, here's a group of people saying, "Hey, unite," and then the other group's like, "Nah, we're nationalists and we don't believe in. We have borders. We don't want to unite with you. You're different. Your culture sucks." So then these nations went out, Rome, Egypt, whatever. They became larger, stronger, powerful military. But you got this little nomadic tribe of Yahud, Jews, uniters, running around saying, "Hey, wait a minute, no, that's not right." And that's, I think, where anti-Semitism began, from the rejection of unity from an egotistic perspective. Does that sound right?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely. It's
all
it's
right.
the exact opposite. It's basically people holding not a different belief, like a different God, you know, there's this God and that God, and we can kind of like my God is stronger. No, it wasn't that. It was again a qualitative difference,
All right,
right?
okay.
Like we're going this way, and no, we're going this way. It's totally on two separate planes, and that's why they were not able to really mingle properly ever. Also, you see it in the corporeal existence of Jews. Wherever they went, they couldn't really fully assimilate. It's not like other people that swallowed other people, right? A lot of different cultures swallowed cultures, and you don't know where they are today, right? It's all kind of got one big, right, mishmash. But not with Jews, because spiritually, internally, if you will, you know, it's a different quality. It doesn't mix like oil and water. It doesn't mix, right? So it doesn't mix.
Well, here's my question. Here's an interesting question. Are there Jews today who are not Jews by your standards in regards, like for example, they're not uniting people, they are harming, they are causing their problem, which I would argue are the ones who further anti-Semitism.
First of all, most Jews are not this kind of.
99%.
So
Yeah,
most of the Jews are causing the
yeah. I
problems of
mean,
the.
people,
Okay,
you have to
But it's
understand. People,
unconscious. Most of it is
yeah,
yeah,
they
it's
don't
unconscious.
understand what they're
totally
doing. Right.
unconscious.
But the reverse is also true, by the way. There are many people today alive who are not Jews, were not born to a Jewish family, have no Jewish roots, maybe 50 generations back. I don't know, but they don't think they're Jews, right? They have like Indians in the Amazon and
Hmm.
people in the Philippines and like you think of the weirdest places, and they have a desire that awakens in them that says, "Whoa, I'm seeking something beyond." Right? And not only that, I have this feeling that somehow it has to do with this unity of this oneness that everybody calls. And then when they find Kabbalah, they're like, oh yeah, this is it. And that's the weirdest thing, you know. If it were only something for for Jews by Jews, we're like, okay, whatever. No, no, you find it everywhere in the world. People in the, we had people in the Amazon.
Yeah, I've seen the
That
Dr. Laitman with the unity of people from
yeah,
Japan, from
yeah,
Africa,
yeah,
from
yeah.
and
People,
all.
yeah, people, all kind of people wake up. So in a way, if you will, like I said earlier, almost every seeker, every person who is listening or not listening to this or whatever, who has this feeling that there's something beyond, that there's some, and that somehow everything is connected, and there's this one quality that we're seeking. You can say that this is a latent Jew, a subconscious Jew, in a way. If you have a desire to unite people, bring them together, subconsciously, that's a Jewish desire.
So where did
Okay.
this idea that a Jew is a Woody Allen type of person that has to
Oh,
be? You see what I'm trying? This is where I
yeah,
think
yeah,
there's
yeah.
a stereotype. It's a,
Right.
and
So,
go ahead.
this is, first of all, just to be clear, there are people who specialize in the history, specifically of the history of the manifestation of anti-Semitism, and they probably know this even better than us. And there are a lot of books on the subject, and you can find it. You can find the beginning of sort of what people call the original anti-Semites being the Egyptians who were right, enslaving the Jews and all that. That's one thing, and then you have later on you have the next level where it was a religious base where with this split, the separation of Christianity, early Christians from Jews, and that was that's where another layer was added to that narrative, that story, that external story. Oh, these people are different because A, B, C, D, and they're gonna look different because I don't want to be associated with them. I have my own new thing going, even though I'm a Jew too, right? Paul was Saul and all those people, they were all Jews. but they felt something a little different, and they went their way, and they wanted to separate themselves from. So suddenly that group, with all its customs and however it looked, was the different, was the other, right? So that, and the church that that came after that really embraced that, and did its part to propagate that image. And then later on, the laws, once the religion was absorbed into into the monarchy of the time, they added, right, laws to support that, because we want to be friends with the church. The church has money. We want to be together, so we're going to go against it. So you have these laws against Jews, that they can't do certain things, they can't work certain professions, and have to live certain places. So it's in a way, once that seed was planted, you can say by nature, or by this upper force, however you want to call it, it was almost inevitable that it would grow and grow and grow to constantly add layers. So you have anti-Semitism based on religion, anti-Semitism based on race. That was reached its peak during the Holocaust, right? Started with Wilhelm Marr and peaked at the Holocaust, and now anti-Semitism based on politics, right? Zionism and all that, anti-Zionism. It's just another garment on the same lady, right? It's the
But
same
do you
lady.
see what I'm saying? If the original Jews were not a specific ethnicity, then anti-Semitism toward them is almost meaningless. But in a religious sense, it would mean something, is what you're saying. So in other words,
I'm saying people
No,
need.
but
go ahead.
you ever walk into a room and you could feel, you could cut the air. You ever, like, you walk into a room and there's been like an argument or something, and you feel tight, you just feel that. Or conversely, you walk into another place where everyone is so happy and you feel the air is a certain way, like it just feels light. And this should be a universal experience. This has nothing to do with Jews. There's what we're talking about is an inner repulsion to something. We're
So
talking about a
it's not
natural
even
inner
consciousness, really.
repulsion.
Yeah.
You can listen. If I get hungry, right, and I'm at my mom's house, so I'm thinking, okay, well, she doesn't eat dairy, or she has this, she has good coffee, and maybe this. If I get hungry and I'm at Leo's house, I'm like, oh my God, he's gonna have the best dips, and he's gonna have this, and he's got that. He's gonna make me an iced coffee like this. The hunger is the feeling. Well, how I'm going to deal with it has to do with my set and my setting, where I am, what's available to me, and all of that. So if this inner repulsion awakens in me, and I live in Gaza, or this inner repulsion awakens in me and I'm in Iran, in Tehran, or this inner repulsion awakens in me and I'm I don't know, in South Carolina, it's going to it's going to take all of the words that it hears from the media, and it's going to take all of its experiences, and it's going to dress it on that inner repulsion. And it's going to have all these different expressions based on the culture and based on education and all those things.
Now, I also
So
want to.
hold on. There is a repulsion to this thing called Jew, and we're not saying it's good or it's bad. In fact, we're not against anti-Semitism. Leo and I are not against anti-Semitism. We are for unity of
Hold
everyone.
on.
But can I interrupt though? So, but
Sure.
there are people who say they are Jews, like Soros, or the villains of Jewry, let's say, the Rothschilds,
Right, right.
that do things like Epstein. He's a Jew, and everyone goes, "Whoa, there's a lot of these Epsteins running around," and that makes all Jews look bad. But you're not doing those things. You, as Kabbalists or the Jews that you are, trying to do your original what Abraham taught you, are being what's the name, slandered in a sense. Like these bad ones are making you all look
This
bad
is our
because
luck. What can we do?
right.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. Like when I asked the question of are there Jews out there who are not actually being Jewish the way they're supposed to be, the answer is yes. And you're saying
So
a
It's
lot
the
here.
of them
state of the
are.
world. This whole
Yes,
entire world
yes.
is collapsing.
So
Yes, definitely.
let's tie
Because
it back
that's
to.
the Jewish. I think the Jewish question has evolved from, like you said, Leo. You said it was first the church, they killed Jesus. Then it became, well, their genetics are different, so let's Holocaust. And
Right.
it just now it's Israel. Now I'm not a fan of Israel as a government, but I don't want to say drive the Israelis
Yeah, but
into the
are
sea.
you a fan of Biden?
No, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like Israel, for example, has done things, but so has my country. My country has done
Yeah.
horrific
We got
things.
a long
And
list too.
right, exactly. So the thing is that because of this history of Jews being portrayed in a certain way, There are, yes, there's money lenders. Yes, there are people doing bad things.
So
You all get, all
so
of
I
you
want
get this thing, right?
I want to explain something. I want to explain
Yeah.
something. It, everything we described again. This is not man-made. Okay, there's you could almost say this is you don't believe in God, fine, take God out of the picture, take the creator out of take an upper force out of the picture. You're looking at a natural evolution. Okay, if that's easier for people to swallow, for example, there's a certain evolution. In that evolution, that those qualities, those forces operating on the system, they have no interest, so to speak, in hiding the differences. On the contrary, the system of nature is interested in preserving the separation between certain, functions in nature and other functions. Just like you want to have, if you want to have a baby, you need a sperm and an egg, right? If all the sperms and all the eggs were exactly the same thing, you couldn't have a baby, right? You need two oppositions. You need plus and minus, right? So, and you can only discern one thing from its opposite, right? You can only discern hot from cold, pressure from vacuum, so on and so forth. So nature works by opposites. Humans perceive reality by perceiving opposites. So, just in the same way, Jews needed to preserve their Jewishness, their oppositeness from society. Okay, so that was built in, no matter how much we try to do it, right? So once you have this oppositeness, this otherness, now anything else that you'll do is always going to clothe on that quality of otherness. Now, to add, to add what do you say? You add a crime on top of, I forget the expression. To make matters worse, to make
Injury
matters
to
worse,
insult.
yeah, exactly,
Injury and insult, salt on the wound.
exactly.
Yeah.
To make matters worse, uh, the whole concept of the Jew, that whole method that they carry of unification, goes against the very essence of our human nature.
Yes.
Even within us, Seth and I, right? We're not some special people. We're just like any other person.
We're as wicked
We
as
are
everyone
having,
else.
yeah, we're
Yeah.
having these battles between our natural egoistic desires for ourselves at the expense of everyone else, like every other human, and we're fighting those desires with our desires for unity, right? So the Jews represent the same quality in society that goes against, they have that. It's ingrained in their being. Now, whether they live up to it or not is besides the point. As long as they don't do this role, society as a whole is going to judge them as a monolith, the
Mm.
wrong kind of monolith, but a monolith, meaning a collective, a group of cells in the body that behaves differently than they should. You should not be a cancer, let's say, and yet you're acting like cancer. I don't like you. You're acting like
Right.
cancer. And because Jews, originate with that group that was able to unite above the growing ego, that gives that group a small edge. Okay, this is where we get into the whole superiority complex and all of that. It's like, I think we talked about it. It's like the difference between someone with two eyes and someone with one eye, right?
Well, or a basketball team playing as a team, and the other guy trying to do his own thing, and it ruins
For
the whole game.
example, yeah, whatever
Yeah.
the analogy you want to choose, but one has an edge. Again, they didn't, I didn't consciously choose that edge being born who I am today, but I'm part of this group that over the years, under certain conditions of the environment, kept that edge going. That quality was kept in it, and and you can either use this edge, right, this quality to connect above the ego, to teach others to connect
Mhm.
above the ego, or you can use that quality to feed the growing ego.
So
Right.
These are the two sides.
there's
And
a
the Jews, I'm sorry, and the Jews who do that,
Or the bad
they,
ones that are making you all
they
look bad.
exactly that they get the
Right.
ire of everyone on.
And that's why I wanted you guys on, because when I listened to your podcasts, and again, my history. I was Mr. Okay, they're all doing this, and yeah, there's a few good ones, but then you learn how you had a woman on your show who was a Zionist Jew getting doxxed and attacked by an anti-Zionist Jew. I'm like, what?
Right.
And she's not lying. She's not faking it, because I have friends that are Jewish. My friends who are Jewish, they've married non-Jews. They do Christmas and Hanukkah. They do the whole thing. They integrated. And it just didn't match up. Like, look, I'm not living in 1930s Germany. Maybe something else happened there. But I'm looking at it as, okay, I understand there's anti-Semitism. I don't think it's irrational as some people claim. In fact, some rabbis say it's necessary. One rabbi said it's a law of nature. Literally, it's literally nature playing its game, and there's nothing you can do about it. And it's just how you handle it, right? Do you kill the Gentiles? Do they kill you? We shouldn't be doing that. So I realized after my years of fighting the Jew, like, you know what, man? I know good Jewish people. I know you have family, you have children, Seth. I know none of us want to fight to the death. None of us want to be in another 1,000-year war. Let's find out a way to calm down and chill out and talk this through and maybe like have a prisoner exchange. Hey, you give me Soros and I'll give you this Nazi and something, because I don't want to see innocent people dying. Okay, whether I know people believe the Holocaust happened different ways. I don't care how it happened. You don't round people up and put them in trains and send them to camps, whether they're death camps or not death camps. You have kids in a
Lucas, the
train,
problem is it
you
doesn't.
know?
You can't solve the problem that way. That's the problem. If it
How do we? I know you guys are trying to solve it, Seth. How do
if
you?
it worked, maybe it would be worthwhile. But after a couple thousand years, it's clear it won't work, because like a cockroach or something, it's not. This quality is a natural quality. You can't. It's like trying to plug a hole in a dike. It's like the cartoon. You put one finger in, then you put the other finger, and then you put your toe in, and then you stick it. You can't stop the process of nature. So what's happening is, while the nations of the world, as we call them, whether it's Babylon, Egypt, Babylon, Greece, Rome, Spain, Germany, for example, now the U.S. develops as the ego of the nations develop. A baby, he's eating like mashed peas. There's no discernments in there. It's just nutrition. But for us, we like a whiskey. We like a dark coffee. We want the bitter. After you work a long day, right? You want a beer. You want something. You want all of these discernments of flavor. You want your meat like grilled with the little char on it. Like, we enjoy, the more we develop, the more our taste develops, the more we call it discernments. The more, it's not just mashed peas anymore. There's so many, what is it like? Um, you know, Passionate lovemaking. It's different than just, there's so many discernments that we have through experience. So as the culture develops and develops and develops, it starts to understand more of, who am I? How do I get closer to what that nature is? And then the Jew piece ideally develops alongside it, and so that all of it becomes more integral. We discover more about who we are. We discover how it happens. We develop a technology, or we develop some new way, or we as people develop more, start to understand life, and with it, that Jew function together. We say, okay, now that's another level of integrality between us, another level of, not that we all become mush again. We stay the lungs, and you be the heart, and you be the liver, and you be the this, but it all becomes integrated. What we see what's happening more and more, like in Babylon, ancient Babylon that we discussed, is we're becoming more and more separate. And what that means is that we're headed towards a world war like that. Each one becomes more and more strong and more separate. What's supposed to happen is more and more strong, but some kind of blanket, some kind of cover of connection among all those stronger powers, and more integral connection around them.
Well, I want to say, like, in regards to war, I mean, there's been people say the Jews start all the wars. So then are these bad ones not doing their job? And then
So
there's like a
let's
new.
say, like, let's go back to the other story. And for some reason, and because everything now is backwards, we
Yeah.
look. I remember when one of the things that people said about Trump when he was running is like, oh, he's daddy's money, or oh,
Mhm.
like, we look like, some reason in society now, we look down on someone whose parents supported them and helped them. But all of us as fathers, we only want to support and help our kids, that they should be able to stand on our shoulders. So there's some natural thing that our children should be able to stand on our shoulders and develop. Some reason we have this thing now in society. It's like, if you have to be a self-made man, you have to, if you got support from the generation before, it's a problem. So with this group of Jews, this is a group for thousands of years. One generation helped the next generation, and the next. So you have an unbelievable product, an unbelievable result from say Mount Sinai when they all came together. And what happened there at that Sinai experience, whether it's actually a mountain or it's an internal experience, those people had an experience, the entire nation, men, women, and children, which is different than religions where, Buddha did something or Jesus did something or Krishna did something. This was the entire nation went through this process together called the receiving of the Torah, passing through the sea, the desert, and the receiving of the Torah. They all received, like Leo said before, like that third, like versus someone who looks at the world with one eye versus someone who looks at the world with two eyes, this added advantage. They felt the integral nature of all of reality. They felt the connection of everything. So you take such a profound experience, you could call that supernatural, even though it's actually natural, as we already discussed. You take such a profound experience and then pass it through. Lucas, think about the challenges in our life. That's when we learn the most. So imagine you went through exile with the Greeks and exile with the Romans and the Spanish Inquisition. Think about how crafty you have to get. Think about how brave you have to get. Think about how clever you have to get. So you have after that unity experience, you take thousands of years of parents passing on to their children, right? Every year at Passover, we read the same story of the Exodus from Egypt for thousands of years. We read the Torah every year, the same story. So you're passing for thousands of years. So now we get to today, and the Jews, not what we're talking about, like the Jews, like when you look the Soros Jews or the Hollywood Jews or whatever, they inherited that experience, but they lost completely the inner meaning of it all. So you take a creature who developed for thousands of years through all of these generations, who had this incredible integral trip, psychedelic trip of feeling the integrality of all of reality together, and now they're completely disconnected from the spiritual part because the ego is so strong in our generation, and therefore you have people who understand how to make businesses, Freud and Marx and what's the Freud's nephew, Leo?
Bernays.
Bernays with that
Bernays,
with
yeah,
Netflix.
yeah, exactly. That's
So
crazy, right? So, and it doesn't make sense. Who are these people? Where'd they come from? In short,
And
that's
it,
where they came from.
and it's all happening again intuitively. People don't question, right, the way they see the world. Oh, I just see the world. Period. They don't question where it came from and what's the purpose. And we kind of live on the tail end of that story. We see a lot of, as we started the conversation right an hour ago, a lot of confusion, a lot of separation. Most people who are considered Jews by any external standard, they don't really understand the inner meaning of that. They ascribe certain set of external customs, and that's what makes me a Jew, and that's it. Or I contribute money to Israel. But some superficial acts that define who they are, without linking it back to the origin of that, as Seth said, that united experience that an entire nation experienced, or to the end goal of that, the purpose of that. So without it, it's just you just see, nothing. It's like it's a misguided. It's like a body
yeah.
without a soul, if you
So
will. If you want to be like,
because of these people getting this advantage over two, and by the way, I think the advantage is studying. I think it's like you said, the customs, like the Chinese have similar customs. So love your family,
right?
And they
your
have a
neighbors.
thousands-year empire.
Right,
Yeah,
right. So,
exactly.
I think the Western people have lost like my ancestors were the Romans. There's no question they were powerful, but what happened to them? They got sloppy. They got selfish, greedy. They expanded too much. They started clipping the things, and next thing you
Yeah.
know, they're gone. Because they didn't have the traditions of what you guys had or what the
But,
Asians
but
had.
by the way, I'm sorry. The same thing what you see will happen with the Chinese. They don't have a
Well, if
national unity.
now because what of the stuff interesting guys, have you ever seen the Mouse Utopia experiment? It's an
Yes,
experiment. So they gave these mice everything they need and they explode and then they all die
right.
because it's too much. And but
What's it called?
the Mouse Utopia experiment. They started a colony of mice. They gave them infinite food, infinite
Sounds like any
everything.
major city in the United States right
Right,
now.
right. And what happened? And then you know what happened, Seth? The mice population blew up. Then when it was too comfortable, they started clumping together. The female mice started acting like men. You see what's happening? Other mice went into the corner, became incels. The next thing you know, they all went extinct. The
Yeah,
Jews had no chance of that. They were getting attacked. And whatever
exactly.
happened to you guys, you
Because the
guys are being.
system, yeah, the system has to preserve that kind of group of people.
Do,
Doesn't matter,
do you know the
what.
guy Doomsday from Superman? He was created by killing him over and over. Every time he died, he became stronger. It's like
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
kind of like that. But anyway, so you have this group of Jews, the Jews. They're supposedly some of them or many of them are not acting the way they should. That's why when I watch Dr. Lightman, he criticizes Jews. That's why the reason why I respect you and Seth and Dr. Lightman, despite what I may disagree on, is the fact that you don't want to make excuses. You don't go, well, I didn't do anything wrong. You do admit certain things, banking, whatever, and that's a big piece. Many Jews, I think, need to accept. Like I have to accept slavery, even though I wasn't. You know
It's
what I'm
not even
saying?
about, no, this is the point that I want to kind of
Yeah,
contend, because this is
sure.
the trajectory that won't lead to the desired goal. It's like you're saying, let's just make peace. No, it won't. This is not the way to solve it. We're saying something much simpler. Everybody's an egoist.
Okay.
Some people have, their egoism is expressed in this way, in that way. These people start wars, these people do things. And yes, Jews are very instrumental in a lot of places in the Western world, no question about it. Maybe even we'll find out later in the Eastern world as well, and in the South. And fine, there's no question that the Jews is there. The Jew is in there. But I have news for everyone listening. Take the Jew out of it, that society wouldn't. It would just advance slower, but it would reach the same conclusion. You see what I'm saying? We're all suffering from the ails of the ego, the will to receive in order to receive. That selfishness is the same everywhere. What the Jews do is they simply accelerate the process. And by the way, if you look at history, certain kings knew that about Jews, and they brought Jews as a catalyst to, hey, let's kickstart this society. The king of Poland, for example, is like, hey, we need to get Poland, on its feet. Let's bring some Jews. Suddenly, you have industry, you have trade, you have, right. They just an accelerant in that regard, but they're not different. The Jews are not supernatural or different. No, we're all egoists. And right now, if you just leave a bunch of egoists, you'll get to the Mouse Utopia experiment. Except you can get there faster or slower. The only question is, how do we break out of that cycle, right? How do we reach the true utopia, the true, pleasure, peace on earth, all those things? How do we do that? We have to correct the way we relate to one another. That's the way to do it. And here, the only ones who can actually help kickstart that process as well is the same enzyme, right? The Jewish enzyme. Except if you use it in this way, it will accelerate it towards doom. If you use it this way, it will accelerate it
and,
towards
and I think they're being
utopia.
used in the doom way right now. So essentially,
Yeah, yeah, of
what
course.
Dr. Laitman's saying to solve anti-Semitism isn't to ask the Gentiles, "Hey, please stop killing us." It's we need to get our shit together as Jews, go back to Babylonian unity, and then light unto the nations by example, not by force, right? Because by force it's going to be anti-Semitic. If you say,
Yeah,
"Listen, we want you to be like this," we're going to say no, and they're going to fight you. But if you're like, "Hey," because I said this before, people got so mad. A lot of people, I can't believe you cut to the Jews on the podcast. I said, listen, if the Jews were doing something so good, you would say, hey, let me know how to do it too, right? For example, if the engine, like in Saudi, what is it, Kuwait, one of these countries, they import German or Nordic engineers because they're good at building, right? So
right.
if the Jews were so good at banking, not robbing us right now, let's say they're good at banking and no debt, nothing, you would say, give me some Jewish bankers because that's what they do. Like every group has different things, like
The Jews are good at systems.
systems.
Okay?
Okay, so
Systems.
right,
So banking, entertainment, social media, they're all systems. Trade, right? It's all places
yeah.
where there's a lot of intersection. That's what the Jew is good at. Network, right?
Well, they're a
That
middleman. They've been a middleman for millennia.
they've been a hub.
Merchants,
Exactly. They've
right?
been a hub.
So when I
So
said that, people are like, "Oh my God, how did you say that?" I'm like, "Listen, if they are good at something and they're doing good with it, which I agree many are not. We've mentioned Soros, Hollywood, garbage, pornography, all this other stuff. If they're doing good, you'll say, "Hey, let me talk to these Jewish people. That's their thing." Just like if you want some good tile, you call Italians, right?
yeah,
Masonry, you call
true,
the
true.
you want a good car, you call the Germans, okay? You don't
Uh,
call the
I,
Jews.
I,
They
I
don't build
have
cars. Jews don't
exactly.
build cars. You want
Look,
pizza? You go get the Italian. If you want a nice, Greek, whatever they make over there,
This is
gyro.
this is what it means actually to be a priest. unto the nations. Their job is just supposed to be to bring this quality. Let the quote unquote Italians make the tiles and the Germans build the cars, meaning let every person, every nation be the full expression, the full perfect expression of who they are. And what the Jew piece is supposed to do is just bring in how can we all then be connected in a good way so we all work together. That's all that piece is supposed to do.
I have a
So the Jew function is simply, you guys are supposed to connect people to other
In a good
people.
way.
That's it.
yeah. I have a quote
In a good
here.
way. Go
I
ahead.
happen to have a
To the
quote.
natural force, one second, to the natural force, which is the same force which propelled, however the earth, we won't get into it, was created, and all the stars were created, and all of life. I mean, think about how many heartbeats just on this small tiny rock, the seventh rock out, how many heartbeats are on here. What is the life force? What is the battery that gives that? So we're talking then about connecting everyone to that life force. So not just that you'll be a great plumber and you'll make good cars and we'll have a good barter system between us, but that everyone will start to feel part of something so much bigger. Like when you're marching in the military, I imagine that's what it's like. Or if you're at a great concert and there's 10,000 people singing together. But imagine somehow feeling all of reality is moving together, and that life force of life is moving through us. It's called like
Well,
eternal fulfillment.
well,
It
you
is
kind of jumped ahead.
natural.
You kind of
Yeah,
jumped
go
ahead,
ahead.
Seth. I just wanted to give a quote on the
Ah,
Greek
okay.
before
Sorry, I
that.
got excited.
Yeah, I know,
I got
no, it's
excited.
good. No, he says, listen, he says we have one guilt on our shoulders, and it rolls over and accumulates from generation to generation, and that is our the fact that we're not doing our job to be light unto the nations, which means to give an example for a perfect society that works in unity and mutual guarantee. We have a word for it in Hebrew, arvut, mutual guarantee. As long as the Jews don't keep the great rule of the Torah, which is love your friend as yourself, we are putting the world to death.
So
So that's
if the Jews are too egotistical themselves, then they will create systems that rob of a nation.
Hold on a second. Hold on.
Yeah.
They should be egotistical. They should be very, very egotistical, because if not, they'll just be cows. But as the ego develops alongside it, right? Because if you have a small amount of power, you can power you can grind wheat. If you have a lot of power, you can fly to California. So we want the power. We want the more power, but alongside it, we need the method to connect. So we're not saying we should squash the ego. We're not saying that. We're
Well,
saying
you can't anyway. You can't be
right.
squashed.
So we're saying so what should we do? As the ego develops, the love has to develop
To
always.
counterbalance the ego's
Exactly.
negative
And
intentions.
exactly.
So if the goal of the Jews, their function, is to simply connect people, then what the hell's going on with this thousands of years of anti-Semitism? What is the and Seth, you wrote a book, The Antidote, and I'm
Hmm.
promoting that. I put links in the description to everyone. All their podcasts, all their stuff's in the description. Is it because you guys are doing something? Not you, but is it because, like Lakeman would say, yes, the Jews are doing things wrong. They're creating systems to rob people. They're in Wall Street. They're not supposed to be doing this shit, and they're doing it, and that's why there's
So
anti-Semitism.
everyone looks. It's really, we have to look at it. What is the vantage point that we're looking at it at? Nobody is really guilty, so to speak, right? Like I heard a story that Hitler didn't get accepted to art school, and what would have happened if Hitler got accepted to art school? And I also heard that his father was an alcoholic who beat the shit out of him, and this and this. So it's like, who really is guilty in any of this? I didn't choose my parents. I didn't choose what education I had when I was raised. I didn't choose what media I was fed. I didn't choose what foods they stuck inside of me, filled with who knows what kind of chemicals, which made me however. So who is guilty in all of this? Or maybe nobody's guilty in all of this. And no, not to say if someone goes and kills someone in the street, yeah, of course there's punishment. We're not saying there's lawlessness. But when we're looking from the place of our conversation right now, when we're looking at what to do about it, we just need to start to understand in a more
Systemic.
The
Systemic.
cosmic,
yeah,
a systemic, a cosmic.
let's look at what's going on. Let's not blame Caesar or blame Genghis Khan or blame whoever. Let's look at what because if we want to talk from a kind of spiritual perspective, what is happening is that all of these experiences are building us so that we can become what we call Adam. We can have the discernments, the understanding and the feeling of what is that unified force of reality that we can become a part of.
Keep in mind that the you need the desire to grow. You need the human ego to grow. So you need a few thousand years for that ego to reach a certain level. You can't just like, hey, Abraham goes, I assembled a few people, I taught them how to do it. Now go back and teach everyone to do it. It doesn't work this
Avengers
way.
assemble. Avengers.
Exactly,
The
Avengers
Avengers.
assemble. Exactly.
No, I look at it like this too, guys. Like you guys know, I'm a big fan of Alan Watts, and
Yeah.
basically he says the world is already perfect. It's just from our perception. Like he said, if you look into your stomach and you see all the fighting going on, you might pick a
Right.
side.
There's
You'd
your
be like, oh, I
answer.
want this side doing. But if that side wins, your whole stuff. It's almost like so. All the pain and suffering we mentioned, you could even say you want to go real spiritual. You want to go really out there. All the bad guys in the world have to be there to make the good guys
Right.
stronger.
So then what exactly? So if that's the case, then
I have a
what the
quote. I have
hell
a
can
quote on
we
that as
do?
well, by the
We'll
way.
get to that quote. Go ahead, Seth. Finish
Okay,
your
so
thought.
if that's the case, then what the hell are we doing and what are we even doing about it? And the point is that we can go through all of these processes not through genocides and not through our children suffering and our children going through bullshit education systems and our parents getting sick with this and the media being filled with. The point is we're saying that if we can learn what's going on, we can process these things internally and emotionally and way faster. Get all of the discern. For example, like there was the Great Depression, and then we suffered, and then 40 years later we learned from it, and now we build a system like this. So that took 40 years, but we're saying no. Hastening the time, that's what that Jew function can help us do, is that we can go through all of these changes together very quickly and more internally and qualitatively instead of what we say in Kabbalah, having to go through it on the flesh, taking another war and then another world war until after World War IV, we're like, you know what, guys, maybe it would be better if we figured out a way to get along,
Well,
when there's 15,000
let me
people
say one
left on the
thing. So
planet.
when one thing that I know about anti-Semites is that they have a repulsion to, for example, what you just said is that without the Jews, things would go slower. Without the Jews, there would be no acceleration. Without the Jews, Europe would collapse. I mean, this one woman said, Barbara Specter said, without Jews at the forefront of this immigrant, Europe won't survive. And what I learned and from others from the past go, well, actually, when Hitler kicked the Jews out, they became a powerhouse like in 4 years, and there was no debt, there was no employment, there's no, and so that perspective, they're like, we don't need any Jews, and that's where
Yeah,
they're coming
again,
from.
but you're looking at a very narrow
That's what I'm
window.
saying. You could argue that that was only 12 years, right, of that, and then the
Yeah,
whole world came against them. But you're saying that this is not even, you don't even have a choice as a Jew. This is just your nature, and your nature
And
is to.
I'm actually saying something more than that. I'm saying, Lucas, that one of your biggest one of your biggest fans who could be a raging
Mhm.
Jew hating person may have this exact quality in him also that I'm calling Jew.
Yeah, and he thinks a different way of doing it. He has a different. He's disagreeing with your
We
idea.
know, Leo and I know, like like neo-Nazi, like violent people who beat the shit out of Jews and worse, who are friends of ours now, who because you come to such a despair if you're willing to go through the process. Um, and this is not for everyone, and we're not talking to everyone. We're talking to people who are interested in this process. If you search yourself, you may discover that you realize if you play out your whole entire life and you get to the end, you're going to realize how empty you are, and maybe there's another way to do it.
well, again, it goes back to that question that started this, this little segment. It's a process. Everything in nature is a process, right? You can't skip stages.
And it's a painful process too.
Well,
It's not always painful, but
no, you're
sometimes.
right. I
It's a
mean,
painful process.
yeah, there's this pain, there's this unpleasantness, discomfort. You know how you raise a good, a great kid. You raise him. A good kid is a frustrated kid. You need that, right? These two forces always. There's that quote again that I wanted to read. It says, "Love will grow according to the measure of the greatness of the hate, and the connection will grow according to the measure of the greatness of separation." Because again, we can only discern something from its opposite. You want infinite of something, you need infinite of the opposite thing. However, again, and this is the trick, we as I said, we don't need to go through yet another world war. We can internalize these things, these torments, this suffering can happen inside each person, but it's a function of their maturity. And that's why we had to wait 2,000 years for humanity to go through all these things. And even now, you see people are waking up, they're asking questions, but it's not everybody yet. But gradually, you need every human to eventually at least ask that question. Otherwise, they're an animal. You can't grow that
And the
will
depth of the depravity.
involuntarily. You can't
And,
do it unconsciously. You can grow consciousness unconsciously. It has to be a conscious participation. That's what makes a human a human. So,
and as
yeah.
good as as good as the good future that we're talking about can be, opposite that is an infinite depth of depravity and suffering. I mean, we all know about horrible things that happen.
But wouldn't that
So
world, even if you achieved it, Seth, would also be cyclical? We get to it, and then it
No,
collapse again.
no. The whole
no,
point is we don't need to.
Oh, you want it? This is like this is like Nirvana level. You're trying to
It's
get
not
to that.
it's not nirvana, but it's like imagine going up an elevator, and as soon as you left the floor disappears. Okay,
it's
this
also
still.
the Kabbalists. One of the more contemporary Kabbalists writes it like this: You're driving to Jerusalem. Okay, you got to go 90 miles to get to Jerusalem. When you're at the 80th mile, you're still not at Jerusalem.
Mhm.
You're at
Right.
the 89th mile, you're still not at Jerusalem. But when you're there, what we're talking about is that it's a totally different work. It's like, for example, Lucas Gage, who's 17 years old facing his problems, versus Lucas Gage now looking at those same problems. You're not looking at them in the same way. You're not looking at time the same way you did when you were in high
Right.
school.
Right. You grew up
It's
and
a
you
totally
transcend it.
different way of looking at things. And we're talking about a qualitatively different kind of human being. You'll look just like you look now, but the inner world will be
You'll see the
completely
world
different.
differently already. You'll be at peace with
Completely different.
everything,
Like
as
a
it is
guy who,
now.
yeah,
Yeah, like reaching Zen. It's like when I went through my experience, the reason I changed my name and everything was I hit this epiphany. I was like, I can function the way I was prior without hatred. And I have people on Twitter like, no, you need hate. You need to hate everyone. You need to. I'm like, no, you don't. You can do the same actions without hatred, without being angry and impotent and feeling. Because hatred has a toxic, negative, draining. Yeah,
Well,
maybe
you need that to the extent that it will help you
right to get you to that
recognize,
point.
yeah,
Yes.
what has to change. I'm sorry to have all these quotes, but they just popped,
Go
and I
ahead.
just,
Have your quotes.
it,
Have your quotes.
yeah, yeah. Baba Sulam writes, who's the you heard that name, the Kabbalist. He writes, the time of existence for each and every state is only a certain amount of time, sufficient to grow the level of evil in it to such an extent that the public cannot remain in it. And then the public has to assemble around it, destroy it, and arrange in a state that's better for the correction of that generation. I mean,
so
every evil state that humanity has gone through, slavery and war and this and that,
We've
was
gone through it.
necessary.
Yeah, we
Was
went through it.
necessary. You have to go, and it happens also on a personal level. You need it until you can't stand it, and then there's a
You know,
natural
it's I got a
desire.
quote for you. Lao Tzu says, "We only get tired of being sick when we're sick of our sickness.
There you go.
We'll stop
Same.
being sick when we're sick of our sickness." So that's the
Exactly.
same
exactly.
thing. That's
Yep,
that's ancient Chinese
exactly.
intelligence there. But yeah, I said I'd have you guys for an hour. Do you have anything else? I mean, it's an hour 20. Do you want to go a little bit longer, 10 more minutes, or you want to cut it off? Whatever you guys want to do.
I could do 5 minutes,
Okay,
five,
because
ten.
we got into a lot. Because look, a lot of people, you got to ask them these questions. I said, listen, I'm not interested in. I,
If there's any question that's going to help,
yeah,
ask
what I
away.
want to
We
do with
don't
this
care how
podcast. Yeah,
hard
yeah.
it is.
No,
Ask away.
no.
But
I said
just
I wanted to have you guys on because I want to continue our conversation from last time, and also to show people that the Jewish people aren't a people like that. There's something else going on, and what like I said, I read Mein Kampf, I read Ford, I've read David Duke, I've read McDonald, I read everybody, but I didn't learn until listened to your podcast how divided you guys are as a people. And but you, like you said, Leo, even if you're divided, you get attacked as a monolith no matter what. It's just for some crazy reason it happens. And I wanted to learn because look, despite my opinion on Israel or other countries or everything, Hollywood Jews or power, I don't want innocent people dying. Is that a good thing? I think so. I don't care if you're
Sure,
Jewish, Muslim, gay,
sure.
straight. I'm not a fan of transgender people. I think it's I don't want them to die either. I don't want anyone innocent to die. Okay. So my view is this: we could either sit here and go to war with the Jew forever and ever and ever and ever and fight back and forth, or we could say, let's get the good Jews and the good Gentiles and sit down and say, well, how can we fix this mess? What can we do together? And if it's just talking to you guys, I lose nothing. I don't get hurt. You don't get hurt. And it shows people, hey, maybe I'm too hard on these people. Yeah, I'm not saying be friends with George Soros. I'm not saying, oh, it's okay that this guy did
So,
this, and
so
I'm
okay, so,
saying,
so we're saying no. So we're with you. So we're
yeah,
saying if anyone listening here, you want to start doing something good, start with creating these kernels of unity, and the family is one such kernel. It's the basic unit.
It's the
Now you
most
don't even
important
need.
one.
which, by the way,
Correct?
the Jews, you guys have a very powerful family structure. Again,
That
things
is
like
true,
I mentioned before, Shabbat. It's
right?
Saturday. You shut off your phones. You have some wine. I don't know what foods you eat. I think it's like
It
matzah bread or something. I don't know I don't know the whole thing. But okay, now as an Italian, I had that years ago with my family. That's gone. As I mentioned off camera, there's no more block parties. Like nobody
yeah.
knows anyone. The
So
Jews.
so so
What's that city in New York, Seth? There's not a single homeless Jew, not one. What's the city? Do you know what it is? I don't
Is it
remember the name.
Muncie? Is it
I don't know
Muncie?
what it is,
I
but
mean,
people say Jews are greedy, Jews are selfish. When it's them together, not one poor Jew,
no, no,
not one
there are a
homeless
lot
Jew.
there are a lot of great customs
Yes,
and great kind of traditions. There was just a guy on YouTube Shorts, this black guy, I forget his name, and he was talking about this word in Yiddish called fargoin,
yeah.
and
Oh
you
yeah, I
know that,
saw
that
that one. Yeah, he
you
gave
saw that one, right? Where
yeah.
we all get together and we buy from you, and if
No
you make
matter
shit
what the
stuff,
price is,
yeah,
right,
well, it's not
right,
even the price, the quality. You make
right,
shit stuff,
right.
we buy it, but then we tell you that you got to fix it, and then you fix it, and we buy it again.
And another thing too is that what I noticed about Jewish community is that 10% of your income you go back to the Jewish community. I don't see that anywhere else. I don't see like, a lot of people like these white nationalist folks, and I have always said to them, you guys we got to build something. Like you guys we don't even send a super chat. These people, if a Jew makes $100 million, he has to give 10 million to the synagogue. When's the
Well,
last time you did that? You see what I'm
look,
trying to say?
look. There are a lot of small, rules, and again, everything that's written in those books, right? We go to the Bible, the Talmud, root and branch. They all have a spiritual root. However, we won't be able to get into it here today, and it's also going to be very confusing to people because they're going to start to take literally a lot of other things, and it's not the point. I think if people to have one takeaway from the show is start building these seeds of unity where you are. Start with a family. Forget Jews, non-Jews. There's science to back it. You have people talking about you need this nuclear of a family. You need two parents. It shows.
You
If
don't
you
have to
don't
have the
have
same
it,
opinions. Unite above your opinions. It's okay that there's two separate opinions.
yeah, and
So how
try
do
to
you unite
create.
with someone, for example? How do you do this though? Because here's another problem. This people want abortion. This person doesn't want abortion. How do you
No,
unite
no,
with
hold
them?
on, hold on, hold on.
Yeah,
Jumping
Start.
straight into the.
No,
that's
no.
what I'm saying.
Just like everything in nature, the entire planet did not get covered in greenery overnight. The entire planet did not get covered in animals overnight. Start with those who also want to unite as well. Start with those who also agree. Like for example, in the family, we both agree we need to make this is what we're doing. So we're playing by the same rules. So you have that opinion, I have that opinion, but together we're going to build something. We're going to have a bigger goal, bigger than you and bigger than me.
Yeah,
Regardless of what our opinions are, we're going to aim towards that. Leo and I are not going out and looking for people who want to kill every Jew and trying to have a conversation with them. We want to talk to whoever says, you know what, maybe there's something for us to talk about. That's where we want to start. We're
no,
not going to the furthest, maniac who has an opposite opinion and try to start there.
yeah.
It's not natural.
Yeah, so in the same way, don't get like an abortionist and an anti-abortionist together. No,
Mhm.
leave them. Let them you go live there. You go live there.
Because
For
because
starters,
Once there's a critical mass of people, there's when you walk by a street performer and there's like nobody watching, so you just keep going. But if you walk by a street performer and there's 100 people gathered around, for sure you're going to go check out what's going on. This is also a natural thing. So if there's enough critical mass of people working towards connection, love, unity, it will naturally make more. Like, how is it possible we see the transgender thing? How is it possible? They're growing
Yeah.
exponentially because it's in the culture. So when unity and love and good connection becomes in the culture, more people will just be absorbed into it naturally.
And not only that, all these deviations from the natural way of things, they will sort themselves out. You
Well, like
won't
the
need.
you're not supporting the trans things. You're saying that when it
It's not. I'm not supporting or not supporting. I'm
right.
saying, don't try to fix these problems head on.
Yeah,
You won't get an abortionist and an anti-abortionist to agree, or a trans and an anti-trans. Forget them.
well, you got
Build
to change the
unity.
culture. You got to have where abortion people don't want it anyway.
Exactly.
If
Start.
people are loving each other and
Yeah,
caring
they're
about
not
each
going to
other,
want to
and all
kill their
these
children.
kids, if all of these kids felt cared for and loved, this is
Yeah.
where they would really be looking to get fulfillment
The
by cutting
yeah
their
the
boobs off.
yeah the
Right. That's
percentage.
so essentially, it's not about passing a law to ban. That won't work because we've seen that
No,
you
no,
can't
no
ban anything.
laws.
You have to change yourself inside, and then you kind of spread that out. You kind of become a light to your own family, like a mini Jew, even though
Yeah.
you're not, kind of
Yes.
have to your community, kind of, and then
Yes,
people
yes.
look up to
And then
you. And
all these things will naturally balance themselves out. You'll see a drop in crime and in this
right,
and in
right,
that.
right,
All kinds of deviation from a natural, because again, this we're spending so much energy on the just the natural corporeal way of doing things. We
right.
shouldn't. Animals don't talk about this, that. No, this lion ate the gazelle. We move on, right? There's no committee against gazelles and all for. We don't do that in nature. And in the same way, we moved away from nature and we're lost. We don't know how to, you can't go back to nature. We're not going to move to the jungle and live by the jungle law, right? No. But if we unite, we will reach a new degree of connection to nature and it will solve by itself 99% of all the problems that you're trying to solve through laws and regulations and all the other stuff. And it will stop interest people as well because they'll have a new focal point in life, a new reason to live, not just to be like, hey, look at me, or no, a totally new paradigm of existence. You understand? It will. It's hard to talk about it. We don't have time to talk about it, but we should probably talk about one time. What try to imagine together what it's like, and see how when we stop dealing with these corporeal expressions, suddenly something beautiful is revealed.
Right. Well, like I said, guys, I have all your just links in the description. So if you're interested in learning more, and I suggest you go look. I don't care if you're anti-Semitic or not. Go listen. I've watched seminars of rabbis 3 hours straight just to listen. One of them, I think he's funny, Mizachi. He's hilarious. I could just listen to him for 3 hours, and he just talks and talks. And I don't agree with everything, but there's lessons there. So study everybody. Listen, because there's wisdom in everything, and it doesn't belong to anyone specifically, and you can learn. So I suggest check out the links down in the description below. Seth, you wrote a book about the antidote to anti-Semitism. If someone wants to look into that, but any final words before I let you guys go? No, no final words. Okay, that's fine. Well,
Hey,
I'll,
thanks for having us.
Yes,
We
thank
need
you. Thanks,
we need more
Lucas.
people like you.
hey, listen, I just want to have some kind of neutral peace with everyone. I don't want innocent people to get hurt, no matter what your beliefs are, what your ethnicity, race. Listen, I've been there, guys. You know me. I've been to the extreme, unfulfilling in of itself, as you could see. So yeah, I'm glad you guys came on. Again, I really appreciate you. Live from Israel, live from the shithole of New Jersey. We both have to share. But I really, and I hope everyone watching, for Christ's sakes, please look beyond what you've learned about Jews and just try to look at it, what they're saying exactly. They don't sound like money lenders, do they? They don't sound like Rothschild Hollywood pushers. And again, I want to break that stereotype because I honestly think one of the biggest things of anti-Semitism is that stereotype, and it is perpetrated by certain types of people. But not all of you are part of that, and it's not right that there's a monolithical judgment. Just like the white man holding us down. Nobody likes that. No one likes it when you have white privilege. It's the same kind of attack. So those of us white folks, Europeans, we don't like that. Well, I'm sure the Jewish folks who have nothing to do with the IMF or Hollywood or whatever don't like it either. And no group likes it, so we should stop that. So that's why I wanted to make this podcast with you guys. I really appreciate you coming
Thanks,
on. Thanks
Lucas.
for your time. Hopefully this opens up some eyes for people, get them chill out for a little bit, because I think the way forward is not another World War. By the way, if you could just text Zelensky and Newland, I know you got the numbers. Just
Yeah,
tell
yeah,
them
we're all in the same WhatsApp
stop,
group, so we'll take care of that. Yeah.
stop the war, damn it, stop Newland. Anyway, no, but I don't want to see an ugly situation ever again, because
No.
I'm just a decent freaking person, and I think you guys are too. So that's why I wanted to make this podcast. Call me a cuck. I don't give a shit what anyone says. I have children. I want to see them in a safer future. And if we're at war for another 5,000 years with the Jews, it's never going to stop. So, so no thanks. I'd rather
We don't have that
evolve.
much time, by the way. Also, we
Yeah,
have.
no, and I see that. I see we don't have much time. But again, thank you guys for coming on. I'll sign the show off if you want to hang around. If you don't, up to you. But I appreciate you guys for coming. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
All
Lucas.
right.
Take care.
Thanks, Lucas.
All right, that was our podcast with the Jew function. Leo and Seth, good people. I speak to them because they don't, again, look, they didn't make excuses. They didn't play, oh, it's the Gentiles' fault. Oh, it's all, no, he says, yes, there are many of us that are doing evil. We're not doing our function. Now, whether you agree with the function being a hub or not is irrelevant. These are people who are self-introspective. They have this method that they could help you reach the creator if you believe it or not. I watched a 6-hour documentary on the Kabbalah. It makes a lot of sense to me. Did that make me a Kabbalist? No, I understand where they're coming from. But I think that the so-called Jewish people have been absolutely slandered and libeled in many ways. Other times they did some bad shit. I'm not saying they didn't, but it's the same thing as I don't believe in collective punishment. Same thing for the white people. I don't like it when the white devil or the white privilege. So we have to stop and see what we're doing. How do we end this millennia war? How do we stop the back and forth? Well, we have to start with ourselves. And as you notice, Leo and Seth said, start with your families. That's what they said. Start with yourself, fix yourself, and go from there. Okay, so that's a very important spiritual thing to understand. But anyway, that's that for this podcast. If you liked what you watched, you could share the show. That's an important thing. Like the Rumble channel so I can grow. And if you liked it as well, you could donate as well. The link's in the description below. So that's that for the show, guys. Thanks for watching. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.